Hey, it's Madness, and welcome to another episode of Fuck You, Hillary Clinton, I Hate You. I've read many articles online about how Hillary was this year's Richard Nixon. Some compared her early campaign to the 1960 election when Nixon lost to JFK. Well, Bernie Sanders turned out to not be JFK, and Hillary was not 1960 Nixon. Others recall the 1968 Nixon, who brought out what he called the silent majority. Nixon's rise to power and his winning of a presidency is supposed to remind you of Hillary Clinton, a candidate who is almost universally known, despised by her political enemies, often tolerated by her political allies, and a voice of pragmatism in a sea of political instability. Well, that's not a coincidence, because in much the same way that Richard Nixon won the presidency in 1968 by speaking on behalf of what he called the non-shouters and the non-demonstrators, some believe that Hillary Clinton is following that similar pathway. In a way, Clinton claimed to speak for her own silent majority, older, more responsible, economically conservative Democrats who don't necessarily turn up at rallies or want sweeping changes to the status quo, but who vote. Like her, these older voters remembered Nixon and the decades in which liberal candidates and their radical movements, driven by the young, naive voters, lost to older, more experienced, pragmatic conservatism led by people like Ronald Reagan. Clinton and her minions have done their best to tie Sanders progressives, me and you, with that long losing tradition by claiming the platform and lofty goals and the more radical fringe supporters was mostly online and not substantive. Now, my concept of Clinton being Nixon is not to compare elections from 1960 against JFK, or 1968 against Hubert Humphrey, or even 1972 against the last great liberal lion, George McGovern. No, my comparison is about personality and policy. Nixon had one thing that Clinton does not have, and that is political charm and savvy. He knew how to work the room, as they say. Clinton can't even work the coat check. On a policy level, her predilection for using executive and military power is even coupled with praise for and from Nixon's Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger. But it's on a personality level that the comparison between the two is so bothersome. Clinton, like Nixon, is secretive, and she's evasive, and she fucking lies like there's no tomorrow. When she's confronted with facts, she will keep lying and try to not have to admit ever telling the truth. Nixon got in trouble for a scandal called Watergate, which a lot of people have heard about but don't really understand. The aptly named Committee to Re-elect the President, or CREEP, had hired a group of ex-CIA clowns to break into the offices of the DNC in the Watergate office complex. They got arrested, and at their hearing, a high-ranking Nixon official showed up and was recognized by two reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, who thought, wow, man, that's fucking weird. And they began investigating and found out that the simple B&E was somehow involved with all these Nixon loyalists. The more they dug into the case, the more layers they uncovered. And the more they uncovered, the closer they got to Nixon. Now, Nixon didn't order the break-in. But when he found out about it, he did what Nixon always did. He lied. And he covered it up. And he destroyed evidence. And he kept denying and lying until there was nowhere else for him to go but to resign. Now, Hillary is legendary for lying. No matter what the liberal media claims about this being a vast right-wing conspiracy, the video of Hillary lying for 13 minutes straight is an internet sensation. And for the last year, she claimed she was cooperating with the FBI. but the State Department Inspector General said that Clinton not only refused to cooperate, none of her aides did either. She said she was allowed to have her own private server when she never received such approval. She even said General Colin Powell told her to use her own email. He says that's a bunch of bullshit. Yet no one in the lamestream media calls this fucking bitch out. She surrounds herself with cult-like minions who fawn over her and show undying loyalty. Well, maybe some of them do die. I'm not really sure about that. But just like Nixon used to have undying loyal minions. Many fell on their sword to try and save him, just like many have fallen on their sword to save the Clintons. Nixon expanded the war in Vietnam, as I'm sure Hillary will expand the war in the Middle East. Nixon was obsessed with how he was perceived, as is Hillary. And Nixon had an enemies list, which I'm sure that Hillary has had since Arkansas. She is what Republicans were under Nixon and under Reagan when it comes to getting rid of unions and supporting the money elite. Here are some other similarities. Both had exceptionally negative ratings from the public. Both lost their first attempt at the presidency. Both were highly distrusted except by their own party. Both went into their presidential campaign years as candidates with experience. Both were war hawks and proponents of big military, but were liberal on social and regulatory policies. In fact, Nixon founded the EPA and started the Earned Income Tax Credit, which helps a lot of kids stay out of poverty. Nixon said he had a secret plan to end the Vietnam War. That was a lie, complete lie. While Hillary lies about the plan to end the war with Syria, but is for regime change to fight ISIS. Both, as I have said before, are secretive and distrust everyone except their loyal minions. Both curse profusely in private, treat their subordinate like trash, and rule them with fear. Both have supported coups abroad in order to impose their own will, no matter how bloody it is. Yeah, Hillary is too similar to Nixon, not in a good way, but a very dangerous and destructive way. Fuck you, Hillary Clinton. I hate you.